Best damn podcast, the best damn town. You wanna get up, get ready to get down. With its big wide sky and the wild river Thames, if you wanna go, we can take you there to Great Falls, Montana.
Welcome to the greatest damn town in Montana, Great Falls. I'm Rebecca Ingham.
I'm Shannon Newth.
And we're no damn experts. I love when you don't give me much of any information.
Yes.
So, folks, today's podcast showed up on my calendar as Highland Cemetery.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, it's after Halloween. This is going to be interesting.
Yes.
So I'm really excited to find out what you have been up to.
Yes.
And we act like this is such a huge office, like we don't even see each other. Like
No, but how it works is you're like, I'm 99.9% of the time the one scheduling our episodes. And so I'll just put it on there and you show up.
I do.
So that's
pretty
that's
handy.
all she knows about this.
Yeah. And then before we went on the air, I heard that you've been delving into this area a little bit. So
I
I'm
have.
really excited
Yes.
to learn what's been going on.
And it's fun for me to just get to share with this.
Yeah.
So this podcast is coming out the Friday before Veterans Day. So this coming Friday. And just for note, what we'll be talking about as well, you'll get to see kind of a visual component of it, put a face to the name and voice you're hearing on our social content on Monday for Veterans Day for this project. So yeah, so we're a military community and we have our Highland Cemetery, which has a lot of history, which I think we'll have multiple episode opportunities with different projects. But let's get into it. I'm going to stop talking and introduce our wonderful guests. So we have Renee Phillips and Donna Winters of the Highland Cemetery. Ladies, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've often sent people out to the cemetery as tourist attractions that maybe I'm weird, maybe I'm part of the majority, but just looking at old headstones is so interesting. The art that used to go into some of that is so impressive.
Right.
So is it normal for you guys that visitors just show up to take a tour of the cemetery?
Actually, it's more common for people who will come through and just go, I heard that Charlie Russell's buried out here, or George Montgomery, or obviously Paris Gibson and his family, those kind of things. Can you show me where they're at? So it's just, it's kind of that touristy thing. Like they just came from the C.M. Russell Museum, and so then they want to kind of
Complete
circle.
the
Full circle story.
Yep.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of people that will come in and say, great grandpa so-and-so, we saw in the, family Bible from generations ago that he's buried out here and nobody knows where he's at. Can you tell us where he's at? And for probably about 95% of them, we can tell them exactly where they're at.
That's
Wow.
pretty cool. We did have some guests in probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. Really nice ladies, I think out of Bozeman. And they're like, we need to get out to the cemetery. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like it's not even Halloween yet. And you guys don't look like people that would go out there. But they had this story of things that they were working on and trying to find some people. And so we sent them out there.
Right. It is fascinating. I could sit here for hours and tell you how it's helped actually families to kind of complete their circle. We've had people that have come out and go, so the scuttlebutt in the family is da-da-da-da-da, and it happened back in, the 19 whatever. Can you help us kind of figure things out? And we have connected dots for families. And in the office, literally, I have watched people like fall apart just going, you have answered so many questions just because of the things that you have in your files and the ability to research.
Wow.
So before we dig in any further, let's get our guests acquainted with who you people are.
Yeah. So Renee, since you've been talking, you want to go ahead and tell us?
Things that I want our listeners to know is how long you've been in the Great Falls area. How did you end up at a cemetery doing research? And then what you love about the community and maybe who your first kiss was. No, that's a joke, obviously.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if anyone
Is that
bites.
cemetery related?
Yeah, completely.
So I have worked at Highland Cemetery in their office for about 3.5 years.
Okay.
The way that I got involved is that my husband passed away 15.5 years ago. And a family friend, Chris McVitie, the executive director that's out there, our families have known each other for years. And so when he needed some help just in the office, he was kind of like, so you kind of been around the block. Do you want to come and help? And I love the secretarial things and all that kind of stuff. And as a person, I was kind of like, are you kidding me? Not my thing. And yet, because of the family-friend relationship, I went out there and started volunteering, and then eventually they put me on the payroll. And so it was just one of those, I actually do have something to give, a personal story to give, and to help people kind of walk through that initial grief, and have been able to actually do that. That wasn't necessarily why I was hired. I was hired to push papers. But and I've been in the Great Falls area over 30 years. My husband and I, moved here when we got married, raised our family here.
Wow.
So are all cemeteries kind of organized with office staff? Like, it's not like you walk into a cemetery and you check in. So
most cemeteries, at least in our community, don't even have an office.
Okay.
But the Great Falls Genealogical Society has all of that information down there. It's in the 3rd floor of the library.
Okay.
Okay.
And our other guest who's
Donna.
been silent.
Yes, we
now
want to
we're
hear
gonna turn
from you.
on.
Well, I came here in December 1967 when there were 3 wets of snow on 10th Avenue South from Jamestown, New York, which also
wow.
has quite a bit of snow.
Holy moly.
And as you know, that's Lucille Ball's hometown.
Oh, I have the same birthday as Lucille Ball, too.
You do?
Yeah.
Cool.
Different years, but yeah.
Who would have known we'd had so much Lucille
I
Ball
know.
connection right off the bat?
There you go.
And I just stayed here and raised my kids and
Well,
worked at the Great Falls Clinic for 40 years.
Oh my.
She knew my dad.
Yes.
Holy moly.
Yep, Shannon's dad was my eye doctor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
See, all
So
kinds of connections.
I can make the connection between healthcare and the cemetery fairly easy. How long have you been volunteering at the cemetery?
Well, I copied the list of requests and went over and met Renee, and she helped me find them. And if she wasn't busy, she would even go out with me. And so there were like 109 requests, if I remember.
This
And
is from Find a Grave is when
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, can you explain the
Find a
requests
grave?
and
Yeah.
Find a Grave and all of that? Yeah.
well, I went on Find a Grave, and it says volunteers, and then there is a little line there that says requests, and you click on it, and it gives you the names and their date of birth and date of death, and that they're looking for a picture of their headstones.
Okay. So these are people whose family members, loved ones, they can't find a headstone. So it's a website where you can go to try to.
Is it a national
Compile.
website or is it Highland Cemetery's website?
No, it's not
okay.
Highland.
Yeah, it's national.
Okay.
Yeah.
What
No, wait.
Okay, yeah.
Donna, I just got to. How are you just happen upon this website?
Yeah. What inspired you to get involved with that?
Well, my granddaughter had called from college at one point and was asking me questions about the family that I couldn't even answer. And so I went on Ancestry, and one thing leads you to another thing, leads you to another thing, and then that was how I found Find a Grave.
Okay.
And, you know, you can, go, this is so-and-so, and this was their dad, and this was their dad, and this was their dad. And I found out stuff about the family. I mean, I had no idea.
Do you have siblings you didn't know about?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a
You never
good
know.
thing,
You never
Donna.
know,
That's
yeah.
a good thing.
And you just started this quest like a year and a half ago. Is that right?
It was June or July of 2023.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
So on this site, it lists everyone who's looking for headstones in Great Falls and just
or
random
anywhere in the world,
Yeah,
right?
anywhere. Yeah.
Right.
and then
Okay.
random people can just go, "Hey, I'm going to go see if I can find them here."
There was a fellow from Germany
Okay.
that was requesting a headstone at Highland.
Oh, okay.
And then
like he knew what cemetery
Right.
it was in.
right.
Okay.
And then you report the problem if Renee doesn't have a record of the burial there, and it gives you options you can pick. And then you email back the problem, and then that goes to them, and then they can contact you and say, thank you for doing that, or,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you then went to Renee and you're like, hey, turns out a lot of people are looking for headstones in Highland Cemetery. I'm going to tackle this because it seems like a fun way to spend my day. And Renee said, I agree.
Pretty much. You've got it.
That's
The
the
neighbors
you in
are
our
quiet.
The neighbors are
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people hanging out out there, stumble over folks having coffee. So I think that's not a bad deal. So you are you just exclusively looking for certain types of people? Anybody who puts a request? Like, where's your passion point?
If one shows up, I just did one the other day. Douglas was the last name, and we went out and found him. I mean, he doesn't have a stone, but
So what happens when they don't have a stone? That would be my luck.
You get to contact the family, actually, and that's part of what their request is they've come out and looked and can't find a stone. And so then they ask, so are we just, can we just not find great-grandpa? But back in the day, depending on when they passed, sometimes people couldn't afford a stone.
Right.
And so then that's kind of the reason. So then people now, whatever the relative situation is, a lot of them will actually say, then we want to provide a stone.
Okay.
So there's record that that
they're
person by that name is buried, but it's a matter of finding which
Exactly.
plot and then deciding if a headstone is going to go there.
Right.
And when I spoke with Donna the other day for Veterans Day, her focus, you've had a lot in the veterans area of the cemetery.
the first veterans that I found were on the Find a Grave list. But one day I was down there and I thought, why are there gaps in the rows where it's the big white headstones? So I just walked the rows and wrote the names down, and where I thought there should be somebody, I just drew a line, and then I went and looked in the office in the soldier's plot book, and that's how we figured out who the names of these people were. And some of them did have a thing on Find a Grave, and some of them then I just found through newspapers.com. And so
She became a little investigative
Yeah.
reporter here.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So then I go to Ancestry, Family Search, newspapers. I've been to the Genealogy Society. They have Fold 3. And I've been to the History Museum. I've been to some of the mortuaries to see, because the optimal piece of paper you can get is their discharge summary. And
So I gotta ask, people are just willing to give you this stuff? Or do you have to have some type of credential or...
To get the information.
well, I don't have any credentials. But I have gone, like to Croxford's and said, do you potentially have any information in your files on this person that we can send in to the National Cemetery Association to see if we can get a headstone for this person?
Wow.
And because she's representing, as well as myself, representing Highland Cemetery, we have a relationship with each one of the funeral homes here in Great Falls, as well as we've got some connections within the Veterans Administration. And so we built a trust. So we haven't abused the information that we're getting, and that's why they're willing to send it our way.
Okay.
Yeah, there's been a few times I can't even get my own records because...
Right. Well, part of it, say this tactfully, part of it is because you're not deceased.
Well, yeah. Well,
should
but
be
I'm
glad.
talking like when I go to do something at the DMV, they're like, "Oh, well,
right.
you can't do this." I'm like, "You know, I'm married to him." Like, well, until he shows up, we can't. And I'm
Right.
like, "Oh my goodness."
Right, right.
Just look, you can see we're connected. We've got the same last name, the same address.
Right.
I'd say we're probably okay to do this. And, oh no, we're not allowed to do that until like, oh my goodness.
I think Donna needs like a special badge, like a Highland Cemetery investigator badge for when she goes these places.
Right.
I like.
Right.
Will you share some of the stories that you shared with me about some of the veterans that you found? And there's some fascinating ones, and I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, but it was an interest Lot.
Vinegar.
Yes, Lot. Yes.
Well, he had cancer. He was 30 years old, but he had been overseas, and he had been ill for some time and did pass away at Deaconess. And they were originally going to through the auspices of the American Legion and the Veterans Council, his mother was in Oklahoma, and they were going to ship his body to Oklahoma. But then I guess through maybe conversations, they decide to bury him at Highland. So that's why he's there.
And he was one that didn't have a headstone.
Right, he's the one that they put up the other day.
So, how rare is it that someone is supposed to be shipped to Oklahoma and then just ends up getting buried in Great Falls?
Well, it just said his mother couldn't afford anything, and so I'm assuming that that's in the conversation. It was like, well, he passed away here. He lived here for I don't know how long,
But he passed in 1921, if I remember that story correctly. And so we're talking the Great Depression. And so even in our records, I can go back and show you. So when an epidemic came through, or so many children in that winter passed away from pneumonia, or the
Scarlet fever.
Right.
Yeah.
Or any of that, financially, there's a lot more people that were buried in our Potter's Field section during a certain amount of time, and you could just see the economics of the community at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I've been able to put a lot of pieces together like that.
That's interesting. There's also, I was surprised too. I mean, not just this gentleman, but wasn't there a Frenchman, or there's people from other countries that end up buried here, which I just would have never anticipated, even thinking about wars and things like that. Like, how do these people end up in Great Falls, Montana?
There are naturalized citizens that did fight in the wars, and there's Norway and Scotland and Germany that I know that were in like World War I and World War II.
What would you say is one of your most interesting cases that you've investigated, or one that you think just tugs mostly at your heart?
Well, there was Frank Stedman. He was like 19, and his stone was one that was delivered, and he was killed in France in the Ardennes forest, and he was buried over there. And one of the things that Pershing had said was, it's going to be hell or Hoboken by Christmas, and he was killed, and they buried him over there, and then they disinterred him. And when the body was shipped back in, it landed in Hoboken. But he had written a letter to his folks, and he had that on him. And the chaplain put a postscript telling the parents that he had been killed and that he was buried over there.
And you
they
have a
had
copy
sent
of
him
that
a picture
in the office. We got to see like the copy of the letter that this guy had on him when he died.
Oh, my
Right.
goodness.
Right.
So they shipped him. How did he end up from Hoboken to here?
Right.
I don't know how they got him from Hoboken, from New Jersey to Montana, but they did,
But the
Goodness.
family was living in Monarch at the time.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
why there's a connection to the community.
Yeah.
Well, that
But
makes a little more
still,
sense.
Great Falls, Monarch, it's still
Yeah.
different location. And it's just fascinating to me, the different people. And I mean, this goes back talking just about the veterans area, not even about the rest of the cemetery there. You have people from every war, it seems. I mean, it goes.
Right.
You have
From the
Spanish
Civil
American
War.
there, Civil War, the World Wars, and it's also interesting. There's the North and South, like a Confederate line, which within the cemetery there as well.
What?
Yeah.
Right.
And that
fought
was
for the North, you get placed in a different part of the cemetery. And
On
if
the
you-
north side of that particular section. If you fought as a Confederate, which there is notation in our books that they were Confederate, they are buried on the south side of that particular section.
Which I also think is just interesting that we have, it's a fairly large amount of people who fought on the Confederate side buried
Right.
here too.
Right.
Yeah.
Did they die during the war, or did they get
Not
out of the war and then they
Okay.
moved out here? Because
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, how did you end up in the North?
I'm not an expert in world or American history for that matter. I'm just not an expert in a lot of things, but
That's why we're called no damn experts.
I'm just thinking the war didn't happen in our neck
Not
of the
even
woods.
close. Yeah.
Right. So a lot of them came out for the railroad, to work on the railroad, or to come out and work with mining. So if they were in the Civil War, even thinking if they were 20 years old during the Civil War, and then they had lots of life to live. But when they did pass, they were acknowledged for having served.
Right.
And that's why they could be buried in that particular section.
Okay. Interesting.
So are you just looking? What else do you do as a volunteer out there, Donna?
She's like, investigate.
I helped Renee one day for about 3 hours in the office, just doing office stuff.
Oh,
And there's like about 109 requests for Old Highland, and neither one of us is venturing down there until the snakes are gone.
Oh, fair.
So-
That's fair. What is Old Highland?
right. And why are there snakes? And why aren't you brave enough to go play with the snakes?
I don't like snakes. Neither does
agreed.
Renee.
Yes.
These aren't cute little snakes. These are large snakes. Anyway, and they're there, during the summer, and so we'll just kind of save
Yeah.
that for a little
Yeah.
bit later.
Winter.
That's
so
that's
Old Highland,
like
so on the east side.
of the veterans
Right,
area.
right.
Okay.
And it's pretty, this time of year, it's pretty noticeable where Old Highland and New Highland kind of the differentiate, because Old Highland doesn't have any sprinkler system. New Highland does.
Oh.
And so we just don't have water out there. Therefore, everything's brown there, water as the rest of it is green.
Gotcha.
So then
Okay.
Old Highland, the way that we in our records have differentiated is that the entrance to Highland Cemetery used to be on Highland Road, which is the east part of the property,
Okay.
which now is, fenced off, so on and so forth. But that's where even C.M. Russell came through. That was the entrance.
Okay.
And so was there,
Okay.
and then, went down the gravel roads and to
Mhm.
his particular spot. But now the entrance is over on, 20th, 33rd, 33rd.
Yes.
There we go. Anyway, and then, when that was incorporated in 1911, then they made that other entrance.
Okay.
Yeah.
How,
So then Old Highland is like things, I think the earliest burial we have out there is 1888.
okay.
Oh, wow.
So at the very beginning of, when Great Falls was even established.
Yeah.
And so we have the records back to then.
Wow.
And then 1911 is when they opened up the other part and started
Okay.
using other sections.
And this Old Highland one that when the snakes are gone, you'll which they might be now.
Right.
It's snowing today. What you said there's 109 in just the old that
Well,
that part doesn't even look
requests for the find a grave, places that people are saying, I heard
They
that
could
my
be
great
there.
whatever is there. Could
That's a
you find it
lot.
and then take pictures of that stone for
Yeah.
us? And
wow.
Are these records all paper or digital?
okay, thinking back to 1888.
Right. This is paper time.
Literally, it's 4x6 cards. Thicker. It's not just paper. But these cards are literally over 100 years old. The things that
They
I'm
have them in
handling,
the office,
it's in
yeah.
a fireproof room, which is great because a couple of years ago we had a fire on the property
Oh,
that
no.
swept through from the west on a field and then came onto the
Oh.
property. And that was where we were like, get everything you can into that room before we get off the property because we can't lose this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of amazing, when the secretary back 100 years ago was writing stuff down. I'm still seeing that. We recently found, the ledgers, the books of the exchange of finances back in the day, and it's all handwritten in their leather ledgers. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating.
Can people just tour the office? As a museum?
Only if I'm there.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'd welcome people to come out and just kind of pick my brain and just kind of see what we do. And our hope is to just keep honoring the people that have been out there. There's over 28,600 people that have been buried out there. And so it's just
What was that number?
28,000 over
my gosh.
600. Yeah, 20,600.
That's so many people.
That's so many. I don't think I
Right.
would have guessed anywhere close to even as expansive as it is. And like this is probably just
Is
my
that
lack of
just-
skill, but that's a lot.
Shannon mentioned something about the Potter's Field. Is that
Yeah.
just the 28,000? Is that just the named
That we
people
know.
you know?
No, we actually have all of the Potter's Field names as well. There's
Okay.
1,063 in that particular section, but no stones there. And that's another project we're working
Yeah,
on.
and this is where you're going to have to come back when that's another, we'll do a video thing on it and we'll have them back again once
be
that's
great.
complete. But can you give just a brief explanation of, we've mentioned Potter's Field a few times,
Right.
but what is Potter's Field?
So the Potter's Field is in our old section. And back in the day, it was either called county plots or Potter's Field plots. And so in 1892, Paris Gibson sold 5 acres of land out there. And so the whole acreage used to belong to Paris Gibson and his business partner, James Hill.
Okay.
And so then back in 1892, there was an exchange of land between Paris Gibson and the county, Cascade County. So Cascade County purchased 5 acres out there. Literally, it said on the deed, for the burial of the poor.
Oh.
And so then, it would be people that didn't have family members or, were transients and just nobody knew what to do with them when they passed. The county was then in charge. And so this was the place. And so up until about 2.5 years ago, we had no clue where on the property this 5 acres was because there are no headstones, 0. We have all their names. We have what they passed from, date of birth, date of death, all that kind of stuff, but didn't know where it was physically at until a gentleman from the Genealogical Society, Gary Campbell, I've got to get his name in there, he came across an old Tribune article about that exchange, that purchase by the county. And so then we went back to that time frame from the Trib and actually found the original deed. And so I have that copy.
Wow.
Great people down at the surveyor's office, they gave me a copy of that. And it gave the exact description from the corner on that east entrance of where the diagram was, exactly 585 feet from this corner to that corner to this, to this, to this. So then the surveyor put that over cadastral map, and he said, this is your location. And so we went out there and we go, oh, it makes sense, just kind of in the pattern of how they, mapped everything out. Anyway, so since that time, we've been able to have a gentleman come out there with ground penetrating radar, and he's been able to kind of map and go, yeah, there's some patterns as to the divots that are in, underground. Another gentleman has come out with his metal detector, and so it's still an ongoing project. But our project pretty much is we're trying to honor those people there, and figure out. We can go into that later.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yes. Well, that's fascinating stuff. Donna, why have you taken so much of your time and energy and efforts to be an investigator and do this? Why is it important to you?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, she's like me. She thinks they're cool areas of the
They're
world.
just near and dear to my heart, I guess. And I thought, well, why not me?
Right.
Because the original requests went back to 2016, and I thought, well, it doesn't look like anybody's doing it, so why don't I try to do it? So, and it's just getting the information and a little paperwork, and then Justin or Renee or Chris sign it, and then I send it in, and then we wait to hope and get a headstone from the National Cemetery Association. And then we'll go from there with the ones that they can't follow the thread, but it says that they're buried there, and on their cards it says World War I or Spanish American, and so.
And you said you've had 55 that you've been able to.
I've got information
figure out,
on,
right? Yeah.
And I just found another one today.
Did you? Oh, wow.
Henry Clay's grandson is buried there.
Okay.
And he was the Secretary of State under John Quincy Adams.
Oh, my goodness.
And it said that his folks had died when he was young, and his grandfather raised him. And he was born on a steamboat in the Mississippi. And he was in the Spanish-American War and the Civil War. But I don't know if we'll be able to find
and he's
stuff.
Here for some reason. Huh. Yeah. That's fascinating.
Well, he was on a ship. It just kept floating this way.
Yes. Yeah.
More than likely, it was probably stopped at Fort Benton because that was where so many of them came to.
Wandered this direction.
Yeah. Ended up here.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah. That's a lot. I mean, Donna, you've done a lot in a little over a year. 55 that's a lot. How many hours do you think you've dedicated to this?
Oh, I don't know, and I keep track of it for DAR.
Daughters of the American Revolution is what she's in.
Thank you. Yeah.
And but I know I haven't reported them all because I sit on the computer and copy stuff out.
You kind of get lost, I imagine.
Do you then go hike Highland Cemetery and find the headstones and take pictures of all of these things?
Yes, if they're there. But most of them don't have a headstone.
How rewarding is it to see the ones that you've gotten to see that now have a headstone?
I could have just cried.
Well, that's I mean, you've made such a difference for people.
I agree.
So I think that's a really impressive thing that someone just cares enough about another human being. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. What does that mean for the families who you've talked to have
Oh, are
a
you friends
resolution?
with any of them?
Well, there's Martin Van Buren Hinderleiter. He was one, and Lot Vinegar and Mr. Pratt. And I did email them, and they were just so thrilled and couldn't wait till the headstones are set to get pictures of them. So I think they were very grateful.
Yeah. That's just, it feels
I hope they're
complete
coming
that
here
way.
and taking you out to dinner or something.
Yeah.
Like, thanks. Let's take you out to dinner.
That's right.
Tell me about this family member I didn't know about until now. That would be pretty cool.
For those who want to come and see some of the new headstones that are there in the Veterans area, maybe you're going to be here for Veterans Day coming up. Of course, we're home to the Montana Veterans Memorial as well. Can you kind of give people an idea or direction of how to get to the Veterans area at Highland, or when it's open to see and all of that?
Right. So our gates are open from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening. And so people are welcome to just drive there. The best direction on the property, because we have, I think it's like 40 plus acres of, the different sections. This particular section that we're talking about is our old Highland. We also have a new Highland section, kitty corner to it. But the old Highland is where all of the white upright monument headstones are. There's some flat ones in there as well, but it's pretty obvious. As well as there's a cannon there that was used during the Civil War, both for the North and the South.
That's crazy to
and
me. I
there's some
remember
flags out there.
Yeah. Real before you finish talking about it, can you talk about that cannon and how it's ended up there? Do you know the story of that?
I know bits of the story. The better person to ask would be Norma Ashby Smith.
Of course.
So she's
Of course it is.
course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. But it was used in the Civil War for both sides.
Right, because
So
it
one
was
side stole it from
exactly,
the other.
exactly, and then used it against that side that they got
That's
it from.
That's what.
But it
part of
started
my
out on
strategy
Ellis
for war.
Island, where the Statue of Liberty is,
Okay.
and then did its rounds. And I can't remember the parts of the story. Why in the world Great Falls, Montana? That I don't know.
Yeah.
But Norma knows that story.
Yeah. There's so many things about, as we're talking about who, it's like, why, how Great Falls for all of these
Right.
things. Yeah.
Exactly.
Again, it's the layers of history here in Great Falls
Right.
that you wouldn't think it all would be here from the outside, but then you really start diving into our history, and there's so much more to it than would seem. So, yeah. I'm sorry, were you done? I got distracted by the cannon.
Yes.
Were you done explaining?
I'm just saying that if people just keep going south on the property towards the water tower, which is very obvious, it's a big gray structure, and then next to that is our office. If they go east from there, they will definitely see that white upright section, because it's the only one that looks like that on the property, and then they can go visit down there.
Do you have what's your current projects you're working on right now that you're hoping to see resolution to soon?
Oh, boy. I don't know.
The one in England, let them know.
Oh, yes. Well, we have a Canadian soldier.
Okay.
Oh,
And we have a British soldier who was murdered on the train between Shelby and Great Falls.
ooh.
And they did get the fellas
The British
that did it.
Both of them were murdered, or the British?
The British
Okay.
soldier was murdered.
Okay.
And Cascade County buried him. And Toole, Ponderay, and Teton absorbed the cost of the trial.
Huh.
And he has a cenotaph in Manchester, England, but his body is here.
A cenotaph, it's just this whole other vocabulary that we use.
yeah.
Okay, so the cenotaph just means that it's a marker there, but the body's not there.
Okay. Good to know.
And he had a silk bag on him with correspondence and a Medal of Valor from the First World War.
Wow.
And so I'm sure that's how they knew what his name was. And I did write to the Royal British Legion, but as of yet, I have not received anything, because even if at some point we can get some money together to get him a headstone, I'd like to know how to have it engraved.
Right.
So, yeah, there's lots of...
And again, what was he doing on the train? Why did they kill him? Like all of these questions.
Well,
it was a foiled robbery, wasn't it?
They robbed him, and he had a brother in Philadelphia. And I'm assuming he was just, and it was right after the Depression, probably had no money,
Yeah.
just going from one coast to the other, sightseeing or whatever,
Yeah.
before he went back to England.
And again, just tagging on that, so seeing in our records how many people came out here specifically, whether they were immigrants or transients, whatever it might have been, after the war, you come back, you have no job, so on and so forth, that coming here because the railroad was up and coming during the Depression, 20s, 30s, 40s, that kind of a thing, as well as mining was still a hot thing. I've learned all kinds of things about Great Falls itself. I wasn't born and raised here, and so I'm fascinated by the history. I didn't know that Sand Coulee used to have 2,000 people in it. It was big because of mining. And so lots of people came because of that draw of the whole opportunities for jobs.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was the Wild West. Things happened. You looked at someone cross, you could die.
Yeah. Very true.
And Renee worked on one, his name, with the granddaughter, and his name is Adolf Hollenbeck. And on his card, he lived in Miles City, and his occupation was listed as cowboy.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Well, that is just awesome. I appreciate Shannon finding out this was going on because I had no idea.
Renee had reached out to me thanks to a family friend, and so this is all Renee. Yeah.
Now I'm going to tell you folks, again, a stop at a cemetery may not be a top priority for travel here, but I'm going to say
this one's really fascinating.
There's just so much cool things to see. I used to, when I lived in Bozeman, go to the cemetery in Bozeman all the time and just look at headstones.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Well, I know when I've traveled overseas to England, I mean, going to cemeteries there is fascinating because it's the history, it's the story, it's the design, all of those things.
So you want an experience that you don't get everywhere else?
That's right.
Here.
And it's full of celebrities as well.
Yeah. A lot of people. But I think what's really cool is you know these people as much as you can, having never met them. But that's really cool.
And again, our hope is that we can honor them as people. Again, going back to this Potter's Field project, that they didn't have the honor at the time. And so just that's my motivation. It's not just part of my job there, but to be able to go, they served in a war.
Right.
And
that's
whether
right.
they died in the war or not, they served in our military. And that's how, I want to honor them, is to help Donna find these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and folks, you don't just have to come and tour. I know a lot of you like to give back when you travel. It's a whole new type of traveler. So if you decide you want to spend a few days here and do some research at the History Museum that has a new vault and absolutely gorgeous area, and then go out to the cemetery and do some volunteer work out there, you certainly can. No one's going to stop you.
Renee will welcome you with open arms.
And I think it is one of the coolest places where you can just go and walk around. Like there's no entrance fee. There's nobody going to yell at you if you're just wandering around in the cemetery.
Right.
Unless you broke it
Unless
in.
you've done bad. Yeah.
Right.
As
like
long
if
as you're
you're doing
respectful.
nefarious things.
And the ladies came and did the flowers up by the office.
Ooh.
Right. We had some volunteers that came through. Their family member had passed in the summer, and they were taking care of their own things. Well, we have a limited staff out there, and so we have a flower garden right outside our office, and they were like, oh, we love to do, landscaping and gardening and everything. And so they came through and just blitzed it, and it's beautiful. It's not my thing in the sense of I don't have that skill, and I don't have the time out there as well.
Yeah.
And so they came through, and they were just tickled.
That's
Just
neat.
tickled to use their skills to be able to, make a difference.
That's neat. And a way it shows too, like you can be creative with how you use your skills to get back to others. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If anyone has an interest in beautifying the front of our office, feel
please.
free to
please
bring some potted
Yes.
flowers.
Maybe
we
not
would
right
welcome
now,
that.
but
No, like
in the
next
spring.
summer. That'd be fine.
Yeah.
Still looking
Please.
for a canoe. If you're a long-time listener, just drop the canoe off on the front lawn as well.
You know what? This is totally on a tangent, but with the canoe, have you noticed that Mackenzie River Pizza, the canoe that used to be inside, is just sitting
Outside
the rest? Have we asked
Yeah.
them?
I don't think it's seaworthy.
Oh, I thought you just wanted it for decor.
Nope.
You want?
I want a working canoe
you
that I
want a-
can
Oh, okay.
be
Never,
gifted to me personally. So that
never mind.
I
I
can
thought
go
you
down
wanted
the
it for
water.
decor in here.
Nope.
Oh. Separate topic. Never mind. Sorry for that tangent.
That'll happen every now and
it
again.
does.
So Highland Cemetery open from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m.
Every day?
Yes, I think so. I'm sorry.
7
I'm
days a
just
week?
there.
No,
for
you're
you.
good. Yeah.
Yes. I'm
Okay.
so sorry. It is accessible. I was just trying to think. I'm not there 5 days a week, so I don't remember.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know what
Well, I'm not there.
Yeah.
Somebody might be.
Yeah.
Right.
Can anybody like go to look at these records and hold them, or do they need like the white gloves and
No. Nope. Don't need the white gloves.
glass enclosures?
No. Shannon was out there and saw that we have a lot of ours in an old shoebox. So
It's real official.
fireproof,
But
room,
it is
though.
fireproof.
It's
Yeah.
That is
It
helpful.
is really cool though to see the 100-year-old
Yeah.
cards and what was
Original
written on
writing.
there.
And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
records today are digital.
So we're trying to do that since Chris McVita came on board about 3.5-4 years ago. He's the one that's kind of, let's get into the 21st century. But to try to put all of that, 28,000, people's
That's a lot.
information on, but there is a database with the Genealogical Society. It's just not our database,
Okay.
but it is digital with them.
Okay.
No, this is going to be a stupid question, but that's my forte. Can people be buried in Highland Cemetery today, or is it
Yes,
done
it's
accepting
active.
people?
It is
Okay.
active, yes. Not in the soldier's plot because it's full.
Okay.
That old cemetery or old soldier's plot, but the new one, the new vet section, does have room in it,
Okay.
as well as other sections.
This is also going to be a weird question. Is there a capacity limit to the acreage you have?
Not at this point.
Okay.
The original land mass was 240 acres. We don't own that now. And so I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Originally, Paris Gibson had envisioned that the amount of land that it would take would be like the size of Minneapolis.
Oh my goodness.
And all the people that would be living there at the time that
Yeah.
he came this way, he wanted enough room for that to be, to handle that amount. And that hasn't happened. Just Great Falls hasn't grown to that
Sure.
capacity. So there's still, we still have plenty of room out there.
Good question.
I'm just always curious on the
Mhm.
last person in. We're done now. I just,
There
because
are
there's
a
only so
couple.
much space. So I don't
There are a couple of sections where that's the case,
Yeah.
but not the cemeteries.
Okay.
Huh.
There you go.
Well, thanking you so much for coming
Yeah.
by.
Yeah.
Thank you for finding them.
Well, yeah. Thank you for finding me. Yeah.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you
Yes,
for
thank
all of
you.
your work you're doing to help so many families and people and
welcome.
connect to these
Welcome.
stories. Like, it's important work, and thank you for doing that.
We
You're
know
welcome.
Norma Ashby Smith leads the effort to do the
Waking the Dead.
Waking. She always confuses it with
Waking
walking.
the Dead. And I just find that to be the most unique thing. And
Yeah.
I would love to just have, one a month out there.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to go and visit
That's
this person.
fascinating.
and
That
Yeah.
is one
learn
of our
about them.
goals in the office, is to make a historical walking tour pamphlet.
Oh,
that's
kind
a
of
great idea.
in the offing to do more. So they usually do 13 or 14 each summer when they do the Waking the Dead.
Yeah.
And we were able to present the Potter's Field this year for the first
Yeah.
time. But we hope to find other interesting stories that aren't the common ones. So one that's in my mind is Donald Holt. He was a bronc rider. And his particular memorial stone is like this beautiful piece of artwork with a poem on it. It's absolutely gorgeous. And his story is very interesting as well. So stories like that we'd be able to
Yeah.
uncover, we want to put on some kind of a booklet.
that would
Well,
be
keep
cool.
us posted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to tell us stories about people who are from here, we'd love
We're
it.
all about it.
Yeah. And folks, if you haven't put this on your agenda itinerary yet for when you visit Great Falls, get it on there and spend some time in the cemetery. It sounds weird, but it's going to be
It's
an
gonna be really
absolute
cool.
amazing experience
And the full
for you.
circle experiences, you're looking at the full history of Great Falls.
Yeah. Right.
And so, folks, until we see your bright, smiling, happy, healthy faces here in our great, great city, we do hope you're creating amazing memories with your friends and family wherever you might be. We'll see you soon.
We Are No Dam Experts is the recorded claims from Great Falls, Montana, covering what you need to know about this amazing damn town. Damn, that felt good.